Hello and welcome to the Pay It Forward podcast hosted by Payable. Now, I'm Doug McKenzie and today we're going to be looking at what really captured the secret sauce of Lithuania's success in the fintech field. And joining me here today is Greta Ranonyté from the Fintech Hub LT. Greta, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm great, ready to talk and to dive into the fintech in Lithuania.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And could you tell our viewers a bit more about your role and what Fintech Hub LT gets up to?
Yeah, so thank you, Doug. So my name is, as Doug mentioned, is Greta Ranonyté, and I'm the head of Fintech Hub LT Association. So our association unites licensed fintech companies here in Lithuania, which are mainly payment companies. So our focus here is in licenses and in payments. But of course, there are other companies and other fintechs in the country, but we just focus on the payments. And we currently have, as our members, around 60 companies. So the majority of fintechs here in Lithuania are in the association.
Absolutely incredible. And yeah, payments is definitely the spearhead of a lot of fintech innovation over the last decade. So it's amazing that you're right there, embedded with all those organizations. Now that leads me to kind of, we've heard about your organization, but now let's look at the country as a whole. What has contributed to the success of fintech in Lithuania? What's the secret ingredient to why you guys have done so well?
Yes, thank you for that question. It is we quite often get this question. So I would personally say that the key factor for success in Lithuania was collaboration between different stakeholders. Before fintech, so if you look at around 2015, 2016, Lithuania's financial market was very concentrated, which resulted in a lack of innovation, of course, fewer products, and then higher prices for those few products. And what started as a top-to-bottom strategy from the government to attract fintechs into the country to increase competition has actually grown into a flourishing collaboration between different stakeholders currently. The result of that collaboration right now, if you look, right now, is a 5-year fintech strategy published by the Ministry of Finance in 2023, where market participants played a pivotal role in preparing the actions that needed to be taken by the government and, of course, by the market to still have the fintech environment here in Lithuania. If we look at from a more technical point, Lithuania's success was driven by the initiatives coming from the central bank and other governmental institutions. So, for example, Ministry of Finance and Invest Lithuania. Lithuania was one of the first 8 countries to grant access to fintechs to the new SEPA scheme via Central Link. So Central Link is a payment system operated by the Bank of Lithuania, and they offered fintechs an access to the SEPA EU payments in euros. And of course, they had other initiatives, which was a regulatory sandbox. They introduced a newcomers program. They also introduced SEPA Instant. We are one of the first countries to introduce SEPA Instant. So because of that, and these kind of initiatives taken by the central bank and its openness to fintechs, a lot of payment companies chose Lithuania to get a license here, and then of course passport their services through the European Union.
I mean, that leads perfectly to my next question. And you're talking about licenses and being able to passport a service. I mean, I'd love to know about the growth of EMIs or electric money institutions in Lithuania too, because that feels like it's quite concurrent to what you were saying, right?
Yes, so the sector started growing, I would say, in around 2017, 2018, because one of the main reasons was Central Link, and it was due to Brexit. We had Central Link, so we had a very good offer for payment companies to get a license here in Lithuania. And because of Brexit, a lot of UK-based companies lost direct access to EU countries, and they needed, to get a license in one of the EU member states. So Lithuania acted as a gateway to UK companies to passport services to the EU. So that's why in around 2018, 19, 20, we saw a huge increase of electronic money institutions here in Lithuania. And currently we have, I think it's 82 electronic money institutions, but combined with payment institutions is 124. So it puts Lithuania second in terms of licenses issued to payment companies after the UK. But if you look at the European Union, we're the first ones. These results are great, but it has been changing for the last few years. And I would say that the number of new entrants stabilized. And actually, the total amount of fintech companies is slightly decreasing. And of course, there are several reasons to that. One of them is that fintech industry is young. So some startups have been successful while others have failed. So of course, some fintechs either merged or got acquired, and some fintechs just left the market. And the second reason being that the current position of the regulator has changed, and they're not so keen on issuing more licenses. So the focus right now, especially from the regulator, is on the maturity of the current companies operating in Lithuania, not so much on issuing new licenses. But speaking from the maturity standpoint, the growth of volume in terms of number of customers served, volume of transactions, scope of services and industries served, it's still growing. So even though the number of companies is the same, the services is spreading quite significantly.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think that's, as you said, is just a straightforward kind of drop, because we're seeing that across the board. Even here in the UK, we had on a previous podcast episode Sean Forward, the UK CEO of Payable, and he was mentioning how even in the UK there's been a dramatic drop, and it's because to your point, fintech is quite a young industry. Some fail, some go on to succeed. Now, one thing I have always heard from when I hear about fintech in Lithuania is the strong tech talent pool. Not only was the success from Brexiting, passporting, moves there, it's that strong tech talent pool, and more importantly, it's actually gender diverse, which when we look at some of the issues we've had from Gen AI, that is critical to ensuring a stable and future tech scene. So can you tell our viewers about your work with, for instance, the EWN, and how other countries can follow in Lithuania's footsteps?
So thank you for this question. I think that the gender gap and gender diversity, it's really important, especially in the finance sector. So just speaking a little bit more broadly about Lithuania and the gender gap in Lithuania, it is a challenge currently. And, the state data agency reports that a gap of 12.1% the pay for females and males, there was a 12% gap in 2020, and the pace of closing that gap has slowed down in recent years. And actually in 2022, the gap between women's and men's labor income has increased by almost 2 percentage points over the year, with men earning on average 13.6% more than women. But of course, the difference in income is undoubtedly also influenced by the choice of profession. Women earn the highest income in financial and insurance sectors, as well as information and communication activities, but the proportion of women employed in these sectors is only 5% of total women that are employed in Lithuania. So it somehow it also depends on a choice that women make. But if we, this is the broad image, but if we look at the fintech sector, it's at least in Lithuania, it's quite the opposite. So we have, the annual fintech landscape report prepared by Invest Lithuania, which indicates progress, with 43% of employees in fintech companies being women. So more or less half, right? And then the 34% of women holds leadership positions in fintech companies. So, and if we look at the fintech community here in Lithuania, most of us are women. I don't know why it happens, but maybe the guys are the technical part in IT, maybe the CEOs, but all of the compliance power comes from women here in Lithuania. And now just moving a little bit to EVPN. It's actually a non-profit organization dedicated to building a community for women in cards, fintech, and payments in Europe. And it is the first and only pan-European community for women. And the EVPN strives to create more opportunities for women as well as minorities and be a champion for a more diverse and inclusive industry for all. I am not a member of EVPN because I just started my position as the head of association 4 months ago. But I'm really proud that quite a few of our board members, three of the board members, are actually members of EVPN currently.
Amazing. Now, with that in mind, I know there's a lot of competition between the Baltic states, and I'd love to kind of see what Lithuania is doing to continue leading the way out of the three, to really go on and thrive. And also, if you can provide that, as I said, those secret ingredients to your success.
Yeah, so Lithuania has been the fintech leader in the Baltic region for quite some time because we were just the first ones that started. But I would say that in the last 2 years, Latvia has become much more fintech oriented. So the competition has been definitely growing. But if we look just at the numbers, at the initiatives, Lithuania still holds quite a strong position because currently in Lithuania, in 2023, Lithuania had 263 fintech companies. Estonia's number was very similar at 264, while Latvia was behind with 142 fintech companies. So it's basically half of those. And of all the Baltic states, the Lithuanian fintech sector, especially if we look only at licensed fintech segments, not at IT, is the most successful, having grown essentially from scratch. Unlike in Lithuania, the fintech sector in Estonia grew to the, not because Estonia was very fintech oriented, but because they had this general recognition of country's digital society and conditions for digital businesses and famous unicorns names. So it's obvious that because of that global recognition, some companies chose Estonia. But if you look at the initiatives specifically driven to the fintech sector, Lithuania is the first one. Now the Latvian sector, as I said, was the smallest, actually by far, if we look at this licensed segment, and it currently consists of mostly Latvian capital companies because they just wanted to base their business in their home state. But that I'm sure that is going to change with the new initiatives and some changes that have been happening in their central bank. Now, if we look at the strategic documents and analytical documents of all three states, we can see that all of us, we pursue very similar goals. So it's improving the availability of capital, solving the issue of talent shortage, creating a more efficient model of data exchange between the market and state institutions, improving the efficiency of risk management, and it's etc. So it's obvious that the challenges we face are very similar. But what I can say that looking at the Latvian initiatives, Lithuania has already done them. Sometimes we say that Latvia is Lithuania in 2017 is when we start. So Latvia is at that starting point. So for example, Lithuania as a country already have a working consulting channel for companies seeking a license that Latvia wants to introduce. We already have a working regulatory sandbox. We successfully issue European licenses for crowdfunding platform operators. We, of course, implement RegTech solutions, and we have many IT companies serving licensed fintech institutions, and etc. So it's if we look at that, Lithuania is one step further, or maybe a few steps further than Latvia, but there are not that many initiatives aimed at attracting new companies, as I mentioned before, right? So our focus right now is at high value. High value added products, services, increasing the size of companies, increasing the number of clients those companies serve. So all of the initiatives are aimed at maturity of the companies, not so much at attracting new entrants into the market, while Latvia is looking at those new entrants. So of course, I'm sure that the numbers will grow there as well. But also, at the same time, I guess it's common to compare all of the Baltic states, but we should also not be considered always only as competitors, right? Because certain problems, such as the development of capital markets or improving access to capital for fintech companies, can only be solved by all three of us working together. Because we, if we look at countries separately, we're just too small of a market for capital, for attracting foreign capital.
Definitely. I mean, what I'm taking away from that is cooperation between the three states, increased communication from the private and public sector. And with that in mind, you'll be able to create added value and not have to just focus on insane growth like you had been from 2018.
Yeah.
Now, because we're coming to time, Greta, I've got to kind of conjoin the next two questions and just look at, for instance, the US Internal Revenue Service has included Lithuania on its approved KYC list. And we here on the Pay It Forward podcast, we're very interested in how, for instance, merchants are paying, how people are paying. So, what's that doing for payments in Lithuania? How are payments in Lithuania changing? And why is KYC such an important part for Lithuania?
So with the first part, the IRS. So Lithuania's inclusion to the IRS approved KYC country list is beneficial for both, Lithuania as a country and then its financial market participants. So, for example, if we look from the country's perspective, currently Lithuania strives to be globally recognized as a high value added European fintech hotspot and a center of excellence for anti-money laundering. Being included in the IRS list is one step closer to that goal. It is especially important right now as Lithuania is competing with 8 other EU member states to host the Anti-Money Laundering Agency, which is going to be a new EU-level supervisory authority. So we are one of those of 9 countries striving for Vilnius, our capital, to host that supervisory authority. I hope we win. The fight in the European Parliament. But now looking, from the market's perspective, it's just basically it makes it easier for Lithuanian companies to do business with US counterparts. So either to find partners or export more services from Lithuania to US. And now the second part of your question on the overall KYC, KYC procedures. First and foremost, I need to say that KYC and other procedures such as ODD and EDD are taken very seriously here in Lithuania, especially in terms of sanctions. As I'm sure you are well aware that Lithuania plays a pivotal role in supporting Ukraine in the war efforts. So anything that happens with sanctions is taken really seriously in Lithuania. But at the same time, right, when we look at it, it's important to manage risks, but it's also KYC can become really burdensome to companies. So Lithuania has taken some initiatives to make it easier for companies to comply. And just to quickly mention 3 of them. So first one is accepting driver's license instead of identity cards or passwords in the KYC procedure. This was done to attract, basically because of Brexit, to attract UK-based companies, because in most of the EU states, only passports can be accepted in the KYC. The second aspect is allowing financial institutions to use state registries for the supporting documents, so that consumer journey would be as convenient and fast as possible, not requiring customers to provide those documents. And the third aspect being that it is allowed to outsource some of the function to third parties that use artificial intelligence solutions to verify clients onboarding digitally. So risk management, but also to make it easier for companies, more convenient, both are taken at the same time.
Well, you know what? I think that summarizes Lithuania's rise to fame so eloquently, in the fact that you've made doing business easier, you've made it safer, and you've made it more transparent. And that means if you ever have a problem, you can speak to the public sector, or you can get some groundswell on the private sector. So Greta, thank you so much for providing that insight. It's such a fascinating country, and in such a fascinating industry, the two together just seem like a match made in heaven. So thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
You can catch the rest of the series and so much more over at payable.com, and of course FF News, where you'll see the rest of the series too. Thank you very much, and goodbye.